Hello and welcome to this video on trigonometry. So this is the first of two videos I'm going to be uploading. We're going to first start by looking at how to work out missing sides on right angle triangles before going on to looking at how to calculate angles. Okay, so the first step when trying to calculate missing sides on a right angle triangle using trigonometry is to label the sides. So we've got these three pieces of terminology here. We've got the hypotenuse here. You may remember that from Pythagoras perhaps. Hypotenuse is always the longest side on a right angle triangle and it's found opposite the right angle. So it will not form the right angle, it will be directly opposite it. Then we've got these other two sides. Now these aren't really relevant for Pythagoras, but they are relevant for trigonometry. Now usually when you are trying to work out the missing side on a right angle triangle using trigonometry, you will have an angle labelled. So in this particular diagram here we've got this letter X. So the opposite side will be the side that's opposite the angle that you are given. So you can see here this side over here does not touch that X, it's directly opposite it. Now the adjacent side, which is the base on this triangle, is the side next to the given angle, so it forms the angle. So you can see here this side, this adjacent side, is forming that angle X. So that's always your first step. If you label it, you can use H, O and A if you want to, but label those sides. That's the same whether you're doing a missing side or whether you're trying to work out a missing angle on the triangle. So let's take a look at this with a blank example here. So the hypotenuse is this angle X just here. So we've got this side labelled X, so that's an important side within this question. The other side we're given here is this adjacent, which is that 23 meters. So that's one of the sides that we know the length of already. And then we've got the opposite side here, which we're not really actually doing anything with. But just for the purpose of this, I'll just show you that that's the opposite because it's directly opposite that angle that's 37 degrees. But what you might want to do, and this will help you with step 2, is you just label the ones you're working with. So we're working with the hypotenuse because it's got an X on it, and we're working with the side that's 23 meters. Okay. So our next step is to identify the trigonometric ratio we are using. So whether you are using a sine, a cosine or a tangent trig ratio. This will help you to identify the button you need on your scientific calculator. And we've got this little acronym here. We've got SO, CA, TOA. So what that means is for sine, the sine of an angle is opposite divided by hypotenuse. The cosine of an angle is the adjacent divided by the hypotenuse. The tangent of an angle is the opposite divided by the adjacent. And the way that we can remember these trig ratios is using this little acronym. The formula triangles that we've got here will be quite useful for the next step when we come to looking at the calculation that we need to do. So let me just show you how you would go about identifying your trig ratio. So we need to do what I said at the start of the video, which was to label your sides. So we've got this X here, which is the hypotenuse, that's opposite the right angle, and then we've got the adjacent down here, which is this 23 meters. So we're working with these two sides, and the only ratio that has the adjacent hypotenuse as part of it is this cosine ratio. Okay, so just a reminder, we've got our 23 meters, which is the adjacent, and our hypotenuse is the X. So now it's about working out whether this is a multiplication or a division. So we can write the cosine of 37 in the bottom left there. We've got the adjacent here, which we do know. So that's 23, and then our hypotenuse is the X we are trying to figure out. So if you have a look, because we've got the 23 at the top of the triangle and the cosine of 37 on the bottom, that means this one is going to be a division. So if we did the 23 divided by the cosine of 37, that will tell us that that hypotenuse on this triangle is 28.8 centimeters.
Here's your first example then. So pause your video, have a go yourself, and then I'll show you how to do it. Okay, let's take a look at this then. So first of all, we need to label our sides. So the hypotenuse is this one down here. We're not doing anything with that though, so I'm going to rub off my label there. The adjacent side is this 11 centimeters here, because this forms this 42-degree angle. And then we are given the opposite side here, or we're trying to figure out the opposite side here, which is opposite that 42. So you'll see we've got an O and an A. So that's going to be our TOA. It's going to be our tangent that we need. So let's fill in our formula triangle. So you've got the tangent of 42 down here. The opposite we do not currently know. So that goes here. And then we've got our 11 just down here, which is the adjacent. So that tells us, because we've got those two values next to each other, that tells us it's going to be a multiplication. So we have to do 11 multiplied by the tangent of 42. Now what I would always make sure is that you write in your number first. I mean, you can multiply, remember, any way around, so your basic rules of number there. But what's really, really important is you don't do what I'm going to show you now. So what you can do wrong, if you end up putting the tangent of 42 in here, and then you press times 11, it will do it wrong. Because what it will do is it will do 42 times 11, and then it will find the tangent of that. So you've either got to do this, which is to press tan 42 and close your brackets, then multiply it by 11. And that will give you, as you can see, 9.9, which is the answer I've got on screen there. So to avoid that mistake happening, it's much easier just to do this. Just do 11 times by the tangent of 42. You don't even need to bother closing your bracket then. You'll get your correct answer. Okay, so put your number in first, then multiply it by the trigonometric ratio that you need. Okay, so here is your second example then. So pause your video, have a go, and then I'll explain how to tackle this question. Okay, so first of all, first step is always to label your triangle. So we've got this 15 centimeters here, which is the hypotenuse. Now this side AB, which is this one on the left-hand side here, this would be the adjacent, and that's because it is forming that 42-degree angle that we've been given. So what this tells us is we're using our cosine rule, because we've got adjacent and hypotenuse within that rule. So we write down our cosine to the power cosine 42 in the bottom left-hand corner of our formula triangle. We don't know the adjacent. We're trying to figure that out. So we leave the top of the triangle blank, and then we write 15 down here. And now we can put this into our scientific calculator. So 15 multiplied by cosine of 42. And if you press equals to one decimal place, that will be 11.1. Okay, so here's your final example then. So pause your video, have a go, and then I'll show you how to do it. Okay, so if we label our triangle first, let me just put my pen on. So the x here is the hypotenuse on the triangle. The 20, because that's the hypotenuse, remember, is opposite the right angle. The 20 centimeter side is opposite in this case because it's opposite, directly opposite that angle of 35 degrees. So that tells us we're using our sine rule. So we've got this sine formula triangle, which we can now fill in. So we've got the sine of 35 in the bottom left. We know that the opposite here is 20, so that goes at the top, and we're trying to figure out the hypotenuse. So now we can put everything in on our scientific calculator. So we've got 20 divided by the sine of 35, and that should give us 34.9 to 1 decimal place. And that is it for this video. So please stay tuned, because there'll be another video on how to calculate missing angles using trigonometry. So thanks very much for listening, and bye bye.